Today, we are going to dig into a 20-year-old SEO myth. And what's wild is that by busting this one myth, we're going to uncover the actual blueprint for how today's most advanced AI search engines really think. Okay, so let's kick things off with a classic industry joke that honestly is the perfect setup for this whole story. This obsession with synonyms and related terms, it's literally the key to understanding how we went from search engines that matched simple words to ones that understand complex meaning. All right, so let's rewind the clock. We're going all the way back to 2004. The internet was a very different place, and Google had just rolled out a massive update called Brandy. And suddenly, search results just started to feel, well, a lot smarter. So this is what people in the trenches were actually seeing. All of a sudden, a page about pre-owned automobiles could rank when someone searched for used cars. Google seemed to get context in a way it never had before. The whole industry was buzzing, and everyone was asking the exact same question. How in the world is Google doing this? And this is where the big mistake happened. The observation was totally right. Google was understanding the relationships, the semantic connections between words. But the conclusion people jumped to? Way off. The industry latched onto this very technical-sounding term that seemed to fit. Latent Semantic Indexing, or LSI. And just like that, a myth that would last 20 years was born. So, why was this whole LSI Keywords idea a myth from the start? Well, to get it, we have to look at what latent semantic indexing actually is. I mean, it's a real technology. It just was never ever designed for the web. And here's the absolute core of the problem. LSI was invented back in the 1980s, before the public internet was even a thing. It was built to analyze small, static sets of documents. Think a library's collection of academic papers, not the massive, chaotic, constantly changing World Wide Web. You see, LSI has two, fatal flaws for web search. First, it just doesn't scale. Trying to run it on the entire live web is computationally impossible. It would just break. And second, it basically treats text like a soup of words. It completely ignores grammar, so it can't tell the crucial difference between dog bites man and man bites dog. The late, great search patent analyst Bill Slawski, he just nailed it with this quote. He said, using LSI for modern search would be like trying to use a telegraph to browse TikTok. It's the right general idea, communication, but it's completely the wrong tool for the job. All right, so if LSI was a dead end, what was really powering that massive leap forward for Google back in 2004? What was the actual technology? Well, the answer came years later, and it came straight from the source, one of Google's top engineers, a guy named Paul Haar. He revealed that back in 2004, the exact same year as that Brandy update, Google quietly launched one of its most important ranking components ever, its synonym system. And the way this thing worked was, honestly, both brilliantly simple and totally revolutionary. It took what you typed into the search bar and, behind the scenes, automatically expanded it. It was basically adding the word "or" to your search, casting a much wider net to catch all the different ways people might talk about the same thing. So think about it. A search for cycling tours would automatically become a search for cycling or bicycle or bike tours. And that is what made it possible for a page about pre-owned automobiles to show up for used cars. It was the system just matching synonyms. Finally, the cause and the effect actually lined up. But here's the thing. That 2004 synonym system, it wasn't just some clever one-off trick. No, it was the first step in a 20-year journey. It was the foundational idea that everything else was built on top of, which you can explain perfectly with a famous philosophical thought experiment. You've probably heard the saying, it's turtles all the way down. Well, that's exactly what this is. That 2004 synonym system, that's the giant world turtle at the very bottom holding everything else up. Then, standing on top of it, you get systems like RankBrain and neural matching, which expanded from just words to whole concepts. And then, at the very top, what we have today with AI overviews, that's a system that can take one simple question and fan it out into dozens of new queries. So you can see this clear line, this evolutionary path, right? From that first synonym system in 2004 through huge breakthroughs like RankBrain and BERT, all the way to the AI we see today. Step by step, Google was building its own, much more powerful way to understand language. They simply never needed an old, outdated technology like LSI. Okay, so we've busted the myth, we've walked through the real history. So what's the final verdict here? And more importantly, what does this all mean for how we should be creating content right now? Let's go back to Bill Slosky, the guy who knew this stuff inside and out. He was always so precise about this. He famously said that LSI keywords are wrong on 2 levels. The technique doesn't actually use LSI, and the words it spits out aren't really keywords in the traditional sense anyway. And look, if you need that final undeniable nail in the coffin, this is it. This is a direct, crystal clear statement from Google's own search advocate, John Mueller. There's no such thing as LSI keywords. It is so rare to get such a blunt, direct confirmation from Google itself. So that begs the question, right? If it was so wrong, why did this myth stick around for decades? Well, it's because of this really fascinating phenomenon you could call falling forward. SEOs started adding synonyms and related terms to their pages because they believed in LSI. But what was really happening is that they were accidentally creating the perfect target for Google's actual synonym system. They were getting the right results for completely the wrong reasons. And this right here is why all of this really matters. Busting this myth isn't just about being right. It's about strategy. The LSI mindset leads you down a bad path. It encourages this flawed tactic of just sprinkling a checklist of keywords into your content. And that distracts from the real goal, which is to create something genuinely helpful for another human being. So instead of chasing ghosts, what's the actual playbook? Well, here are 5 concrete steps for a modern strategy. It's not about finding magic keywords. It's about doing deep research on your topic, really understanding what Google is already rewarding, structuring your content logically for machines and humans, creating something truly comprehensive, and finally, using structured data to explicitly tell search engines what your page is all about. You see, when you understand this 20-year journey from simple word swapping to complex AI, it gives you this powerful framework for what's coming next. You can see the direction things have been moving. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. If today's AI is just the top turtle, what do you think a next one's going to be?